out the store that you had, the retail outlet with clothing, that you had everything stolen out of it. What happened?
What happened? Well, I'm just going to go back a little bit to the 60s, when my mom opened up a dress store called Sara Troy. And she wanted to call it Sarah Jane after her two children, but I think my father vetoed the last name. And so many years later, I'm wanting to open up a dress store, and it's right before Expo 86. I had this great area that was right before where Expo was going to be. And this was 85. And it was called actually Tabitha's Wear Unusual, after my daughter, Tabitha. Wear, W-A-A-R, and I had a lot of designer clothes in there. I had designers designing for me, and in their designer outfits, there'll never be more than 5 of those particular designs, more than they'll go out. And a particular area had opened up in Vancouver with the big sales, all the cruise ships come in, and a big hotel, and a bunch of people were coming in to buy from me because they're all going to, because their husbands had been the engineers and everything else on it. And so I could dress each one of them totally differently, but in something that nobody else would be seeing. And it was great. But it was actually it was Valentine's Day, and I knew the next day I was going to have a big day with people kind of coming in. And I get called by the police and say that you've been broken into. And I go in there, there's virtually nothing left. And unfortunately, the area that I was in was the red light district, and they were kind of moving them on and trying to put them in another area because Expo coming up, etc. And they always told me I'd be safe. Ha ha. And so it took 8 months to get my insurance paid out. And so I just hadn't made enough money at that point. I was quite a young store, to keep it going. And of course, I had 2 young children at home, and my ex saying to me, who was still my husband at the time, "See, I told you," and, because he didn't like you to succeed. And so it folded, unfortunately, which was sad because I have a passion for fashion, which I then took up later, where I would go out and take people shopping and dress them.
Oh, I love
Especially
that.
people getting back into the workforce or whatever, and love doing that because I have an eye, and I have an eye for a deal, and I have an eye of how to dress people and what suits them. So it was, but yeah, that was my short-lived adventure of owning my own store. Not as successful as my mother, who really did have a very good business eye and really knew what to bring the Chanel suits in before, just as they were coming out. And she just, but my father went and sold it underneath her. Just sold it one
Really?
day. Yeah.
Really?
Just before he died. Yeah. He sold it, gave it away. So I've given that bugger away, and just to be
Wow.
vindictive. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Were they together or?
Yes, they were together, but my dad, at 40, had a heart attack, and in those days they said, "You've got 3 months to live." And so he was a fighter pilot in the war, so he took on dying as if he was fighter piloting, and just became extremely difficult. I drank too much, drove too fast, did everything too much, and he knew he was going to go. But my uncle, who was 11 years older than him, and the lawyer and the accountant who was working for my uncle were working on him, saying she's going to take the money and leave the children. She's going to do this and that. So he wrote my mother out of the will, and he apologized just before his death, the last breath. But he had
Too
been
late.
brainwashed. He had been brainwashed. Yeah.
So who got all the money?
Well, one of them got a new yacht, another one got a new beach house. And my uncle was a miser. Like he and his wife would go out and have tea, but they would share one cup, not buy 2 cups, and worked for the
Really?
Red Cross, and the money of half of it would go in his pocket. Just really charged my mum for having me for a weekend when she was coming back from a cruise and couldn't make it back in time. So yeah, just
Really?
he was one of the, and he
Wow.
was very jealous of my father because my father was very, very gregarious and a businessman. In fact, when the war broke out, he was in Germany because he was in timber business. So Germany was, and Europe, obviously his big counterparts there, and he was dating a German countess, and they had to smuggle him out.
Get him out of the country.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. See, I'm learning things about you that I haven't heard before. Mm. This is very interesting. So when after that, what did you feel like when you lost your store? And I would have been really devastated at losing it.
Yeah, I mean, because I'm always the person is that I'm a trier. Some people say I'm trying, but I'm a trier. Like if something doesn't work, it's like I will try and try again. And I don't give up on things easily. It's, like I try different angles to see, but when everything's gone, it's gone.
Yeah.
Right. When there's no money to replenish it, there isn't. So it was I had to call that quits. And I'd had this fashion show and everything else. I was just beginning to take off, and with Expo coming, it would have been great because the Expo literally would have been opening up in a few months, and we would have been within walking distance of people going down to it. But it's just obviously not meant to be. And so, I often have a word with the universe and say, okay, all right, you taught me into these things, and then they don't manifest the way I envisioned them. Why? And it's like, just the one word, experience. And I said, well, there's some experiences I could do without, thank you.
A lesson,
But
a
I
lesson.
just poured myself, I just poured myself into my children until the next thing, which I think we moved after that. No, yes, we moved shortly after that. And then
Where did you move to?
well, we were in Vancouver. We just moved to a different part of Vancouver. We were renting, so we moved and bought a place. And then I got pregnant with my third child, and we did a renovation to accommodate the expanding family. Yeah.
Mhm.
And there was at a time here in Vancouver, everybody was pulling houses down and building monster homes. So the amount of people that would drive by to see what we're doing, because we kept this character home and just extended. It was quite interesting. I used to say if I put a quarter, bucket out there, got a quarter for everybody drive by, I probably would have paid for the renovation because it was, not something that people did at that time.
Right.
Right. So they were just torn down and built. So, which they're back to doing now. Very few people renovate now. They tear down and build. So.
Oh, yeah. A lot of people, I think it's developers that buy the houses and they
Yeah.
tear them down and they build apartments and things like that. That's
Yes.
what's happening. That's what's
Yeah.
happening here. And it's
Yeah. And here
horrible.
too. Mm-hmm. All
Horrible.
these lovely homes. It's going to be a luxury to live in a home. Everybody's going to be apartment living. Yeah.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like, you lose the character of the
Yeah.
street. You lose
Yes.
the character of what's there. And
Mm-hmm.
the young ones think it's great, but I don't think it's great. I
Until
like,
they have a family and they need the backyard, and then they go, but what do you mean this is $6 million? you know you know I mean, I've got a friend who bought her house 30 years ago and she paid 280, and now it'll be around 5 million.
yeah.
And I mean, when you look back 30 years prior to that, would a house have gone up that much, right? So, but yeah, it's a real crisis here actually, because we just don't have enough homes.
And it is the same here. But what they were talking about, I think I was listening to something about the baby boomers,
Yes, we're baby
who
boomers.
are selling their homes, their big
Uh-huh.
homes, and going into downsizing.
Mhm.
But it's still not creating space for the young ones to buy homes because the
Mhm.
homes are out of the price bracket for
Yes.
first home buyers and things like that. So it doesn't solve anything. The housing crisis, they think of stupid things. I mean,
They're
they
not
need.
thinking.
No, they're not
No,
thinking. They're
they're
just
just rubbing their
stupid.
fingers together. That's it. And it's short-term benefit for a long time pain.
Yeah,
And we're in the long time pain right now with housing.
yeah. And can't even get me started because I'll say things that I don't want to say on radio. It's really interesting to see the housing crisis and how it's not being managed. It's not being
No.
managed at all. Like a lot of things aren't being managed. And I think that there needs to be some new blood in there.
I completely agree. But I also
Mhm.
think that us as the public need to stop just saying, well, I elected you to do that job. We need to stand up to them and by them and say, we will help you do that job. We will hold your compass for you
Mm.
because you are working for us.
Yeah, well, they don't see it as that.
No,
They
once you've
don't.
elected them, yes.
They don't see that we've elected them, or did we elect them?
No,
I'm
we're
not
not their
going there.
slaves. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going there either. And you sort of think, how did that one get back in again? Oh, gotta
I
be
know.
kidding!
I know.
Gotta be kidding me. Anyway,
Yes.
let's move away from that because
Yes. Yes, it's very easy to go down that rabbit hole.
oh yes, yes. So after you raised your children, and what other things did you do with your life? Because you've led quite an exciting life, quite a fun life, growing up and being known as a hippie. Hippies, they were cool in the day too.
Yes. But
Mm.
yes, but not that typical hippie, because a lot of people, because of my English, kind of would, call me pearls and tweed, which I'm not. But I can dress like that. But, give me the flowing clothes, right? And, so it's that bohemianness, I think, that I love about it, which is that free spirit. I don't like restraint. I like to, follow. I don't mind structure, but I don't like restraint. And there's a difference. And this is where a lot of people don't understand the difference. But I was very much one for my children learning to understand where their boundaries were in life, and that to recognize what that boundary was. And, to trust their gut, trust their instincts. And I'll give a case in point with my son, who skipped school one day. And I was on a field trip with one of my youngest daughters. And to back up a little bit, he's quite a good mimic. And he had phoned to say that my son had been arrested for murder. And like, I'm gasping and this and that, and it's him, right? Eventually it's me, Mom. I'm going to throttle you. So I get this phone call saying, excuse me, your son has broken his leg and he's at the hospital. And I go, yeah, right, Tyler. I'm not buying that one. No, ma'am, and it's a deep voice. No, ma'am, you're saying, look, Tyler, you pulling that one over me the other day. I'm not buying, ma'am. Oh my God, it's real. And he had skipped and he had gone to this ravine where they had this hook where they used to swing on over this ravine. When he had put his foot on the hook, he said, I don't feel comfortable with this. It doesn't feel right. And he was about to get off and somebody said, but my girlfriend can do it. And teenage ego stepped up and he went on there. Next thing you know, he is bum over head all the way down into the ravine, 30 feet. When he woke up in the water of the ravine, his leg was behind him, snapped femur, right? So they had to helicopter him out there because it was hard to get him. And so, yes, he had to go through the operation. And I had him on some heavy nutritional. So when they had to put a rod in, and when they drilled a hole to put the screw in to hold the rod in place, the drill bit broke off in the bone because his bone density was so strong. So it was one thing after the other. We were booked to go to Disneyland 2 weeks later, and I had to change that and convince them to let us go in 6 months. So yes, my kids kept me busy. My kids kept me busy.
as they're meant to.
As they're meant to, yes. But I see, a lot of these gray hairs have got their name on it.
Oh, I say all of mine have.
Well, so there's a few other people up there too who have given me that, but yeah, but that was the thing did you listen to your gut? Yeah, my gut told me not to, and I said, then why did you? This is a lesson for you. When your gut says don't do it, when your conscience says don't do it, no matter what the influence is on the outside. And, and I was here as a mother that when they pushed that limit and they fell, I could say to them, you're an idiot. And then put my arms around them and help them get back on their feet again, because that's what we do as parents, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what life is about, is learning those lessons, but learning how to move on.
And, looking at it and saying, well, okay, that's the consequence down there.
Yeah.
Am I ready to take that on
Yes.
board? And if I do, then I have to put up with the consequences.
Yes.
Don't complain to anyone about it because your choice, your choice. And
yes.
that's the interesting thing about all of us, I suppose, when you think it's like, have a go at something, have a go at it. There's nothing wrong with that. If it doesn't work out, then the consequence is it didn't work out. What did you learn from it that you can take onto something else? That's how you look at it.
That's why I don't look at the word failure. I failed. No, for me, failure is that you gave up. When
Yes.
you gave up and you didn't bother to try again, that's failure because you have just given in. But when it's like, you know, you get yourself up and you dust yourself off and you start all over again because, you know, you look at it, okay, that didn't work at that angle. How about this angle or this angle? Or maybe this is something we should just put on the back burner or delete altogether and go somewhere else. But
Yeah.
that's how when I was first asked to be a podcaster, I didn't even know what a podcast was. And I was on a network that was live for 13 months. And the first show, I pressed all the wrong buttons. And then, you know, being live, you know what it's like. Anything could go wrong, right? You
And
find
it
out what you're made
does.
of.
It
Yes.
does. And you just grin and bear it and you move on from it because
Yes.
there's nothing you can do. It is what it is. You can try and fix it. You may fix it and it's okay after that. If it's not
Yeah.
fixable, then too bad. But what are the lessons and what's the journey? The fun,
Yes.
you know, that sort of thing is what it's all about, the learning and the journey of,
Exploration.
oh yes, the excitement, you know.
Yes.
Do we have the boundaries? You know, we set the
Yeah.
boundaries for ourselves. Sometimes you've got to step outside that boundary,
Yeah.
but you've also
To
got to look
test
at
the waters.
test the waters, but look at the consequences
Mm-hmm.
and think, okay, that's a major consequence, or no, this is the consequence. I can deal with that. I can cope with that. And that's a choice you make.
And that was my choice when it came to divorce.
Yeah.
I could stay, perhaps have a roof over my head, you know, the kids, you know, leave them something. But, you know, it was, but no, I'm not living. I'm having a living death. You know, I don't belong here anymore. And
Mm,
so staying for the quote, quote, security, which nobody's ever, guaranteed at all. Who knows what can go on? And I could never see it. And I tried over and over. I said, where do you see ourselves when, you know, kids are gone, empty nest? What are the plans for us in the future? And he could never see them. And I couldn't see them. So clearly that was the end of our chapter. But it was a big chapter to close.
mm,
And it had its repercussions because I had to walk away from a lot
mm.
that I never gained back, you know, in the sense of certain financial security, etc., a home, which of course I'll never have again. But it was my own sanctuary, my own enrichment of my own soul and being was so much more important than the bricks and mortars.
Yeah. And that's a choice, isn't it? A
Yeah,
choice that you make for your sanity and for, you know, living your life and not just existing as
exactly.
as some people choose to do. Now we're going